Whatever happened to President Biden's message of unity? Remember that? The president instead ramping up his attacks against so-called MAGA Republicans in a primetime speech earlier in the week, flanked by U.S. Marines in front of a dramatic backdrop some critics are saying looked authoritarian. Watch.
MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards, and MAGA Republicans are to destroying American democracy. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies.
Okay, so that's the president who campaigned as like Mr. Uniter, Mr. Healer. But now the question is he trying to channel former President Trump? Wall Street Journal writing in an editorial, quote, Joe Biden holds a Trump rally. The president has become his foe's polarizing mirror image. And here's where I really start to get confused, because we played the montage there. Very negative, very dark, destroying the country, threat to the country, all of that. Then our colleague, Peter Doocy, shouted a question at the president. His team didn't want him to answer, but he did anyway. And he appeared to walk it back. Let's watch this together.
Mr. President, do you consider all Trump supporters to be a threat to the country?
You cannot make that case. I don't consider any Trump supporter to be a threat to the country. I do think anyone who calls for the use of violence fails to condemn violence when it's used, refuses to acknowledge when an election has been won, insists upon changing the way in which the rules you count votes. That is a threat to democracy. Democracy. Everything we stand for rests on the platform of democracy. When people voted for Donald Trump and support him now, they weren't voting for attacking the Capitol. They weren't voting for overruling an election. They were voting for a philosophy he put forward.
Okay, well, a couple things that I'll just say here right out of the gate. He talked about violence being wrong. This is a president who, to my knowledge, has still not condemned the assassination plot against a Supreme Court justice. Speaker of the House explicitly would not condemn a series of fire bombings against pro-life centers. I don't think we heard much from him about that. He said you have to be able to acknowledge that an election has been won and lost. I agree. I assume he'll be endorsing Brian Kemp in Georgia for governor against Stacey Abrams. But overall, Tommy, help me here, because we heard what he said. Now he's claiming, no, that's not really true of Trump supporters. Does he remember what was in his speech? Is he realizing it's a bad look? What happened here?
Here's what I think really happened. I think somebody wrote this speech for him because they said, President Biden, you look weak. We need you to come out the gate and show people that you still have some gusto and you can go after Trump, because people are saying you're not going to run in 2024. You're losing steam. That was his moment. But what he said actually to Peter Doocy is more palatable than what he said to the American people. What he said to the American people, he did not make a delineation between extremists who stormed the Capitol or people that rioted for an entire summer in the name of George Floyd. He didn't mention extremists on both sides or fascists or people that want to use violence as a political tool or weapon. He said mega Republicans. Everybody knows what that means. That means Trump supporters. We call ourselves mega Republicans. This was his Hillary Clinton basket of deplorables moment. He categorized us all who support Trump in that fashion and in that way. There was no delineation. And now, of course, they're going to walk it back because it wasn't a good moment for him. But we all know what he meant. It was quite clear to anyone who watched.
But then, David, the White House official Twitter account tweeted out after the walk back and unwalk back, maybe it was a scheduled tweet, where they were basically doubling down on what he had said Thursday night. And Tommy touched on this a little bit. It wasn't just going after January 6th rioters, for example, which I'm all for. He was lumping in and conflating those types of people with just, pro-lifers, for example. Karine Jean-Pierre at the White House was talking about an extreme policy on tax cuts, for example. I mean, this is ludicrous. I mean, that's just a political disagreement. And whatever the politics was here, whatever the calculation was here, I'm not sure it's playing out the way that the White House brain trust intended.
Well, I'm not sure which way it's playing out, but I take a different look at this from a communication strategy standpoint. He was able to deliver in a primetime speech that dark enemies of the republic, although he said democracy, we are a republic. He gave that dark speech. It's not necessarily a contrast with what he said when he answered Peter Doocy. In that primetime speech, he was able to speak to the hardened Democrat base, hands in the air, angry, shouting, dark, eminent.
Dark Brandon.
Right. So this is Joe Biden doing what he's done his entire career as a skilled political liar. I have another part of this, and this is a question that's not been asked on media, not about Joe Biden, but about those 2 Marines. Those Marines that are attached to the White House detachment are commanded out of 8th and I, our nation's oldest barracks in D.C. Where did those Marines come from? Did they come up with the president's detachment from 8th and I? Who was in charge, and why hasn't that person gone across the courtyard in 8th and I to speak to the commandant about why Marines were put in that position? See, while a lot of the argument is political, look at some of the other things that happened here. But communications-wise, he did his job. He set it up for his base, and then he came out the next day and tried to walk it back. And I wasn't surprised by this because it's effective for them.
Well, on the point with the Marines, right, that's been a big controversy. Presidents have spoken many times in front of and with a backdrop of members of the military. That's not new. This, however, was very much a campaign speech, attacking the opposition. He urged people to go vote. And for that reason, the networks did not cover it live. The broadcast networks made the choice not to cover it. That was interesting to me, that choice.
Yeah, that is very interesting, but I think it's very telling also that it was more of a campaign-style speech than it was a speech to the American people, because if he truly was speaking to all of the American people, he offended a lot of people, right? There are a lot of registered Republicans out there who don't want to hear that they're bad people because they're registered for a certain party. I mean, I think that's just a fact. And also, going back to the strategy of this, I'd love to get everybody's take about that setting. I've heard people call it satanic and, other things. It was very dark, and that red light was very strange. I mean, what were they thinking? It
was a weird look, and I think people are going to be talking about it for a while. The optics, the substance, the hypocrisy of a lot of the points he was trying to make. We're not done with that topic. We might return to it tomorrow on the Big Sunday Show.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.